The transport ship moved slowly toward the massive station that floated in the darkness of space. Aurelia 7 was its name, and it was bigger than any city on Earth. Lights covered every part of it like stars that someone had arranged in perfect lines. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went through its ports. This was where the galaxy met to talk, to trade, and to decide the future. Tang Taeho stood near the window of the transport and watched the station grow larger. He was 34 years old, with short black hair and a face that rarely showed emotion. His body was strong but not large. He moved like someone who had learned to fight before he learned to smile. On his hip was a small weapon, and in his eyes was the calm focus of a man who had seen violence and survived it. Behind him, Park Yuna was checking her documents for the 5th time. She was 29, with gentle features and warm eyes that made people trust her instantly. Her hair was tied back neatly, and she wore the formal gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. This was her first major assignment, and her hands were shaking just a little. "Stop worrying," Taeho said without turning around. "You prepared for this." Yuna looked up at his back. "How did you know I was worrying?" "You always tap your foot when you are nervous." "You have been tapping for 20 minutes. She laughed softly and stopped her foot. "I just want everything to go well." This summit happens only once every 100 years. Every major species in the galaxy will be there. If I make a mistake, you will not make a mistake. Taeho finally turned to face her. His expression was serious, but not unkind. "And if anyone causes problems, that is my job to handle. Your job is to smile and talk. My job is everything else." Yuna nodded slowly. She had known Taeho for only 3 months since he was assigned as her security officer. He rarely spoke more than a few sentences at a time. He never joked. He never complained. But she had noticed something about him whenever she was in a room. His eyes checked every corner, every face, every possible danger. It was like having a shadow that would fight for her. The transport docked with a gentle shake. The doors opened, and the smell of recycled air mixed with strange alien perfumes filled their lungs. They stepped out onto the main port of a URELI A-7. The station was even more impressive from inside. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Trees from different worlds grew in gardens along the walkways. And everywhere there were aliens. Yuna had studied pictures and videos, but seeing them in person was different. Tall creatures with blue skin walked past, their 4 arms holding tablets and devices. Small beings with fur and large eyes rode on floating platforms. A group of insect-like aliens clicked and buzzed to each other in their own language. And humans, just a small number of humans, moved carefully through the crowd. Still new to this galactic community, Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. Compared to species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years, humans were children. Many aliens looked at them with curiosity. Some looked with doubt. A few looked with something close to hunger. Taeho noticed everything. His training had taught him to read body language, to spot threats, to understand when something was wrong. And as they walked toward the welcoming ceremony, he saw that several aliens were watching Yuna with too much interest. One of them stood out. He was Kasari. That was what the briefing files had called his species. They were old, powerful, and proud. Their skin was pale gray, almost silver. Their eyes were large and completely black, like pools of oil. They had long fingers that ended in sharp claws, though most Khazari covered them with decorative rings and gems to show their wealth. This one wore more gems than Taeho had ever seen. His name was Ambassador Velthary, and he was staring directly at Yuna. The welcoming ceremony took place in a grand hall filled with representatives from every member world. Speeches were given in dozens of languages, translated instantly by devices worn in the ear. Food and drink from countless planets covered long tables. Music played softly strange melodies that human ears found both beautiful and unsettling. Yuna did her job perfectly. She smiled. She greeted other diplomats. She represented Earth with grace and intelligence. Tejo stayed 3 steps behind her, watching Dot. Then Velthary approached. He moved through the crowd like he owned every person in it. Other aliens stepped aside for him without being asked. When he reached Yuna, he smiled, but the smile did not reach his black eyes. "You are the human cultural attach," he said. His voice was smooth like silk, but there was something cold underneath it. "I am Velthary of the Kasari High Council. I have been curious about your species for some time." Yuna bowed her head politely. "Ambassador Velthary, it is an honor to meet you. Earth values the Kesari's long history of leadership in the Council. Yes, we have led for many centuries." Velthary stepped closer. Too close. "Your kind is very new to the stars. Very fresh. I find that interesting." Tejo moved forward 1 step. Just 1. But Velthary noticed. The ambassador's black eyes flickered to the security officer, then back to Yuna. His smile grew wider. "I would like to invite you to a private meeting. My quarters on the station are quite comfortable. We could discuss cultural exchange between our peoples." Yuna felt something cold run down her spine. She had met powerful people before. She had dealt with difficult personalities. But something about Velthary felt wrong in a way she could not explain. "Thank you for the invitation, Ambassador," she said carefully. "But I must focus on the official summit schedule. Perhaps we can speak during the formal sessions." For just a moment, Velthary's smile disappeared. His eyes went flat and empty. Then the smile returned, colder than before. "Of course," he said. "The formal sessions. How very human of you." He turned and walked away without another word. Yuna let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She turned to Tejo. "That was strange, right? It was not just me?" Tejo watched Velthary's back as the ambassador disappeared into the crowd. His jaw was tight. "It was not just you," he said quietly. "Stay close to me during this summit." Yuna nodded. She trusted him. She did not yet understand just how much she would need to. The first gift arrived on the second morning. Yuna opened her door to find a small box made of something that looked like glass, but felt warm to the touch. Inside was a gem the size of her thumb, glowing with soft purple light. A note was attached, written in perfect Korean, "For the flower of earth, from an admirer." There was no name, but Yuna knew who had sent it. She showed it to Tejo during breakfast. He examined the gem without touching it, then looked at her with serious eyes. "Send it back," he said. "I was planning to. But how do I do that without causing offense? The Kasari are one of the most powerful species in the Council. If I insult their ambassador, you did not ask for this gift. Returning it is not an insult. Keeping it might be a promise." Yuna understood. Among some alien cultures, accepting gifts created obligations. She had the gem returned within the hour, with a polite note explaining that Earth's diplomatic code did not allow personal gifts during official functions. The second gift arrived that evening. This time it was fabric cloth woven from something that shimmered like liquid starlight. The note read, "I understand your customs. This is not a personal gift. Consider it a sample of Kasari trade goods." Yuna sent it back again. The third gift came the next morning. The fourth came at lunch. By the end of the week, she had refused 12 different presents, each more valuable than the last. Gems that could buy a house on Earth. Metals that were rare across the entire galaxy. A small creature in a cage that sang with a voice like wind chimes. She refused them all. Other delegates began to notice. They whispered to each other in hallways. A diplomat from the Vethany species, small creatures with large eyes and kind hearts, approached Yuna quietly during a reception. "You should be careful," the Vethany said. "Ambassador Velthary does not accept rejection well. His species believes they are the highest form of life in the galaxy. When they want something, they take it. Always. What happens if someone refuses them?" Yuna asked. The Vethany looked away. "I do not know. I have never heard of anyone refusing them." That night, Yuna could not sleep. She stood at her window and looked out at the stars, thinking about home, about Earth, about the small apartment in Seoul where her mother still lived, where the streets smelled like food and rain and life. A knock at her door made her jump. It was Taiho. He was still in his uniform, still armed, even though it was past midnight. "I saw your light was on," he said. "Are you all right?" She wanted to say yes. She wanted to be strong. But instead, the truth came out. "I am scared," she admitted. "I do not know what he wants from me. I do not know how to make him stop." Taiho stepped inside and closed the door. He did not sit down. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, the way soldiers stand when they are ready for anything. "Do you want me to report this to the senior delegation?" he asked. "They can file a formal complaint with the council." Yuna shook her head. "Not yet. If we make this official, it becomes an incident. The Khazari might retaliate against Earth's other interests. Trade deals, colony rights, everything we have worked for. I need to handle this carefully." Carefully does not mean alone. She looked at him. In the soft light of the room, his face seemed less hard than usual, almost gentle. "I know," she said quietly. "That is why I am glad you are here." He nodded once. "I will increase my watch. From now on, I will be outside your door at night. If Velthary or anyone else approaches you without permission, I will know." Yuna felt some of the fear lift from her chest. "Thank you, Taiho." He turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. You have done nothing wrong. Remember that. You have the right to say no. That right does not disappear because someone powerful does not like the answer." Then he was gone, and Yuna was alone with the stars again. But this time, she felt a little less small. 3 days later, the formal banquet was held in the station's largest hall. Every species was represented. Music filled the air, strange and beautiful. The food was displayed on floating platforms that drifted between the guests. Lights of every color danced across the ceiling like living things. Yuna wore her formal dress, simple white fabric with silver thread, elegant but not flashy. She moved through the crowd, speaking with delegates, building the relationships that Earth needed. She was good at this. She made people feel comfortable, feel heard, feel valued. But Velthary was watching. She felt his eyes on her from across the room. Every time she looked, he was there, standing with other Khazari, but always turned in her direction, waiting. When she went to get a drink, he appeared beside her. "You have been avoiding me," he said. His voice was soft, but there was no warmth in it. "I have sent Yume tokens of my interest. You have refused them all." Yuna kept her voice calm and professional. "Ambassador, I explained in my notes that our diplomatic code. Your codes do not interest me." He stepped closer. She could smell something strange on him, like old flowers left in the dark. "Among my people, when someone shows interest, the other party is expected to respond. To refuse without offering something in return is considered deeply offensive. I apologize if I have caused offense. That was not my intention. But I am here as a representative of Earth, nothing more. I cannot engage in personal relationships during this summit." Velthary's black eyes seemed to grow darker. "Personal relationships? Is that what you think this is?" He laughed, but it was not a kind sound. "Foolish child. You understand nothing about the galaxy, about power. about what happens to species who forget their place. He reached out and touched her arm. His fingers were cold, and his claws left faint white marks on her skin, even through the fabric. "You will learn," he whispered, "one way or another." Then Tejo was there. He did not push Valkyrie. He did not shout. He simply appeared at Yuna's side, his hand resting casually on her elbow, his body positioned between her and the ambassador. "The Earth delegation is requesting your presence," Tejo said to Yuna. His voice was calm, normal, as if nothing strange was happening. "There is a matter that requires your immediate attention." Yuna understood. "Of course." "Excuse me, Ambassador." She walked away with Tejo. She did not look back, but she heard Valkyrie's voice behind her, quiet and cold. "This is not finished." When they were far enough away, Yuna's hands started to shake. Tejo guided her to a quiet corner where no one could see. "Breathe," he said gently. "You are safe." He touched me. He said I would learn. "Tejo, what does that mean?" Tejo's face was like stone, but in his eyes, something burned. Something that looked like anger, held back by iron control. "It means," he said quietly, "that I will not leave your side. Not for a moment. Not until this summit is over." And from that night on, he never did. The attacks began the next day. Not physical attacks, Valkyrie was too clever for that. These attacks were made of words, votes, and silence. The first sign came during a trade negotiation. Earth had been working for years to gain access to a mining sector near the Outer Rim. The resources there could help millions of people back home. The deal was almost complete. All the signatures were ready. Then the Kesari delegation voted against it. No explanation was given. No reason offered. The Kesari simply said they had changed their minds, and because of their power in the council, 5 other species followed their lead. The deal collapsed in minutes. The Earth delegation was shocked. Their senior diplomat, a gray-haired woman named Director Han, spent hours trying to understand what had happened. She met with other representatives, asked questions, searched for answers. The answer came from an unlikely source. A member of the Lothany species, tall beings with skin like bark and voices like rustling leaves, approached Director Han in a quiet corridor. "You're a young Attach," the Lothany said. "She has drawn the attention of Ambassador Valkyrie. He is not pleased with her responses. This is his way of sending a message." Director Han's face went pale. "Are you saying that the Kesari killed a major trade deal because one of our junior staff refused personal advances?" "I am saying nothing officially," the Lothany replied. "But if your people are wise, you will understand. The Kesari do not forgive rejection. They do not forget it. The longer your Attach resists, the more your delegation will suffer." The Lothany walked away before Director Han could respond. That evening, Director Han called a meeting. Yuna sat at the table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Tejo stood behind her, silent as always. "I do not blame you for this," Director Han said carefully. "What Valkyrie is doing is wrong. It is harassment. If we were back on Earth, he would face serious consequences." She paused. "But we are not on Earth. We are guests in a galaxy where humans have very little power. The Kesari could destroy everything we have built." Yuna felt her heart sink. "What are you asking me to do?" Director Han looked tired, old. "I am not asking you to do anything. But you should know the situation. More votes are coming. More deals. If the Kesari continue blocking us..." She did not finish the sentence. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Tejo spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "With respect, Director, you are suggesting that Yuna should accept the attention of someone who frightens her. Someone who has made threats. Someone who touched her without permission. Is that what Earth's diplomatic service has become?" Director Han's eyes flashed with something shame, maybe, or frustration. I am not suggesting anything, Officer Kong. I am explaining reality. Reality can change, Taiho replied. People change it. That is what humans do. He said nothing more. But his message was clear. The meeting ended without a decision. Yuna returned to her quarters feeling more alone than ever. The weight of entire trade deals, entire futures, seemed to rest on her shoulders. How could she carry that? How could anyone? A soft knock at her door. She opened it to find Taiho. "Walk with me," he said. "Fresh air helps." They walked through the station's artificial gardens, where alien flowers bloomed in colors that had no names in Korean. The air smelled sweet and strange. Other beings passed them, some curious, some indifferent, all wrapped up in their own lives. "This is not your fault," Taiho said after a while. "None of it? It feels like my fault." If I had just accepted his first invitation, then he would have demanded more. People like Valtteri never stop at one thing. You could give him everything, and he would still want more. That is who he is. Yuna nodded slowly. Deep down, she knew he was right. They walked in silence for a while. Then Taiho stopped suddenly. His body went tense. His eyes focused on something ahead. Valtteri was walking toward them. He was alone this time. No guards, no other Kasari. Just the ambassador himself, his silver skin glowing faintly in the garden lights, his black eyes fixed on Yuna like a predator watching prey. "How touching," Valtteri said as he approached. The guard and his little pet taking a stroll. "How very domestic." Yuna stepped back instinctively. Taiho stepped forward. "We do not want trouble," Taiho said evenly. "We are simply walking. Please, let us pass." Valtteri laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Let you pass? This is my station. My galaxy. Your entire species exists here because we allow it. You have no rights that I do not grant you." He moved closer to Taiho, looming over him. The Kasari was taller, broader, older by centuries. His claws gleamed in the light. "I have watched you," Valtteri continued. "Always hovering near her. Always watching. You think you are protecting her?" He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You are nothing but a trained animal. A pet guarding another pet. When this summit ends, she will come with me, willingly or otherwise, and you will not be able to stop it." Taiho did not move, did not blink. "Your kind has no power here," Valtteri finished, smiling. "No power at all." For a moment, there was only silence. The garden flowers swayed gently. Somewhere, water dripped from an artificial waterfall dot. Then Taiho spoke. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. But there was something underneath it. Something that made even Valtteri pause. "Touch her," Taiho said, "and find out." 5 words. Simple words. But the way he said them made the air feel colder. Valtteri's smile flickered. For just a second, something like uncertainty passed across his ancient face. Then he recovered, laughing again. Threats? From a human? How amusing. He stepped back, spreading his arms wide. "I look forward to teaching your species its place in the natural order." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the garden's shadows. Yuna let out a shaking breath. "Taiho. What you said, I meant it." He turned to face her. His expression was the same as always, calm, controlled, unreadable. But his eyes were different now. There was fire in them. Not wildfire, but the controlled burn of a man who had made a decision. "He can threaten politics," Taiho said. "He can threaten trade deals. He can threaten careers. But if he touches you, if he tries to take you, I will stop him. I do not care what it costs." Yuna stared at him. You could die. He has guards. He has power. I know. Then why? Why would you risk that for me? Taeho was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. Because some things matter more than living. And protecting you is one of them. He turned and started walking again, leaving Yuna standing among the alien flowers. Her heart beating fast, she followed him. And neither of them spoke again that night. But something had changed. Something that could not be taken back. The line had been drawn. And soon it would be crossed. The final night of the summit arrived with celebration and ceremony. The great hall of Aurelia 7 was transformed into something from a dream. Floating lights drifted through the air like fireflies made of starlight. Music from a dozen worlds blended together into something strange and beautiful. Beings of every shape and color filled the space, dressed in their finest, speaking in languages that had existed before Earth's sun was born. Yuna stood near the entrance, watching the crowd. She wore a simple white dress, the traditional formal attire of Earth's diplomatic service. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful, but her eyes were tired. The past weeks had worn her down. Taeho was nearby, dressed in his formal uniform. Dark fabric, clean lines, no decorations except for the small Earth symbol on his chest. He watched everything, every face, every shadow, every movement. One more night, Yuna said quietly. Then we go home. One more night, Taeho agreed. But his voice held no relief. His body was tense. Something in the air felt wrong. They moved through the celebration, speaking with delegates, saying goodbyes, building the final connections that might help Earth in the years to come. Yuna smiled and shook hands and said all the right things. But part of her mind was always watching for silver skin and black eyes. Valkyrie was there. She had seen him across the room several times, always surrounded by other Kasari, always watching her. He had not approached. He had not spoken. But his presence felt like a weight on her chest. Stay close to me, Taeho said as the night continued. Do not go anywhere alone. I know. I will be careful. An hour passed. Then 2. The celebration continued, reaching its peak as alien diplomats shared toasts and made promises. Yuna began to relax. Maybe Valkyrie had given up. Maybe his threats were just words. Maybe a message arrived on her personal device. It was from Director Han. Urgent matter. Meet me in Observation Lounge 7. Come immediately. Come alone. Yuna frowned. This was unusual. Director Han never sent messages like this. She looked around for Taeho, but he was speaking with a group of security officers from other delegations. She hesitated. The message seemed real. The code was correct. And Director Han had been under so much stress lately. Maybe something had happened. Maybe Earth's delegation needed her. She should have told Taeho. She should have waited, but she was tired. Her judgment was clouded, and part of her wanted to believe that the nightmare was ending. She walked toward Observation Lounge 7. The corridors of Aurelia 7 were quiet away from the main hall. Her footsteps echoed against the metal floor. The lights here were dimmer, more blue, giving everything a dreamlike quality. She reached the observation lounge and stepped inside. The view was stunning. Massive windows showed the vastness of space stars scattered like diamonds, distant galaxies swirling in colors beyond counting. The room was dark except for the light of the cosmos itself. Director Han was not there. But Valkyrie was. He stood near the windows, his silver form outlined against the stars. 4 Kasari guards waited in the shadows, huge figures with armor and weapons that glinted in the starlight. The doors closed behind Yuna with a heavy sound. Locked. Thank you for coming, Valkyrie said. His voice was calm, pleased, like a hunter who had finally caught his prey. I was beginning to worry that you would not accept my invitation. Yuna's blood went cold. You sent that message. You pretended to be Director Han. A simple trick. Your species trusts technology too much. He began walking toward her slowly, enjoying the moment. I have waited very patiently, little flower. I have offered you gifts. I have given you chances to come willingly. But you refused. Again and again, you refused. I am a diplomat of Earth. I have rights under galactic law, rights? Valtteri laughed. The Khazari wrote those laws. We can rewrite them whenever we choose. He stopped a few steps away from her. His black eyes seemed to swallow the starlight. There is no one coming to help you. The security systems in this section are disabled. Your precious guard is busy on the other side of the station. It is just you and me now. Yuna backed away until she hit the wall. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. What do you want from me? I want you to understand your place. His voice dropped, becoming something dark and terrible. Humans are new to the galaxy. You have not learned the old truths. The universe has predators and prey, strong species and weak species, masters and servants. He reached out and gripped her chin, forcing her to look at him. You are prey. You are weak. You are meant to serve. Let me go. Her voice was shaking, but she forced the words out. I will never go with you willingly. I know. He smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp. That is what makes this interesting. He grabbed her arm hard, so hard that pain shot through her body. His claws dug into her skin, drawing blood. Red human blood dripped onto the floor. You will leave with me tonight, Valtteri said. By the time anyone realizes you are gone, we will be on my ship, heading to Khazari space. There, you will learn what generations before you have learned. Resistance is pointless. Humanity is nothing, and you belong to me. Tears ran down Yuna's face. Not from fear anymore, from anger, from helplessness, from the terrible knowledge that she had walked into a trap and there was no way out. Then she heard something, a distant sound. Like thunder, like something heavy hitting metal dot, then again. Closer. Then the doors to the observation lounge exploded inward. Metal flew through the air. Sparks showered like fireworks. And through the smoke and chaos, a figure emerged. Te-ho. His uniform was torn. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. He had clearly fought his way through something or someone to reach this place. In his hand was a weapon, still smoking from recent use. He looked at Yuna, at the blood on her arm, at Valtteri's grip on her dot. Then he looked at Velthari dot, in his eyes was something that made even the ancient Khazari pause. Not anger, not rage. Something colder, something older. The look of a human who had crossed a line from which there was no return. Let her go, Te-ho said. His voice was quiet, calm, terrifying. Valtteri recovered quickly, pulling Yuna in front of him like a shield. How touching. The pet has found us. Guards kill him. The 4 Khazari guards moved forward, weapons raised. Te-ho did not run. He did not hide. He walked toward them. And what happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. Because, in that moment, humanity stopped being prey. And Valtteri learned that some lines should never be crossed. The first guard was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with arms like tree trunks. He swung a weapon that looked like a blade made of light. It cut through the air with a sound like screaming wind. Te-ho moved. He was not as tall as the Khazari. He was not as strong. He did not have claws or armor or centuries of life. But he had something else, the desperate focus of a man fighting for something more important than himself. He ducked under the blade. His hand found the guard's wrist and twisted. There was a crack of breaking bone. The weapon fell. In the same motion, Taiho drove his elbow into the guard's throat. The massive alien collapsed, gasping for air. One down. 3 to go. The second guard was faster, smarter. He stayed back and fired a weapon that shot bolts of burning energy. Taiho rolled behind a fallen piece of door, metal smoking where the bolts hit. He grabbed a shard of debris, sharp, heavy, and threw it. The guard blocked it easily. But the throw was a distraction. Taiho was already moving, coming from the side. His fist connected with the guard's jaw once, twice, 3 times. The alien staggered. Taiho grabbed the guard's own weapon and turned it against him. A single shot. The guard fell and did not move. 2 down. 2 to go. Yuna watched from across the room, still held by Valkyrie. She could not believe what she was seeing. Taiho was bleeding from multiple cuts now. His movements were getting slower. But he did not stop. He did not hesitate. The third guard was the biggest of them all. He roared and charged, abandoning his weapon for raw strength. He grabbed Taiho and lifted him off the ground, squeezing hard enough to crack ribs. Taiho's face twisted with pain. But even as his bones broke, he reached down and pulled a small knife from his boot. He drove it into the guard's eye. The Kasari screamed and dropped him. Taiho landed hard, barely able to stand. But he found his feet and finished the job with 2 more strikes to the throat. The guard fell. 3 down. 1 to go. The fourth guard was different. Smarter. He had watched his companions fall and understood that this human was not like others. He pulled out a long curved blade, traditional Kasari steel, sharp enough to cut through anything. He attacked with skill and precision. The blade cut through the air, leaving trails of silver light. It found Taiho's side, slicing deep. Blood poured from the wound, human blood, red and warm. Taiho stumbled. His hand pressed against his side, trying to hold himself together. The guard pressed his advantage, slashing again and again. But Taiho would not fall. He caught the blade on his forearm. More blood, more pain. But his other hand found the guard's throat. He squeezed. The guard dropped the blade, clawing at Taiho's grip. They struggled, both bleeding, both dying. Then Taiho twisted. The guard's neck made a terrible sound. He collapsed. 4 down. Taiho stood in the center of the room, surrounded by fallen guards. Blood dripped from his side, his arms, his face. His breathing was heavy, ragged. He was barely standing, but he was standing. He looked across the room at Valkyrie. The ambassador had not moved. His black eyes were wide now, not with anger, but with something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. "This is impossible," Valkyrie whispered. "You are just a human. Just a short-lived, fragile, primitive creature. How could you let her go?" Taiho's voice was steady despite everything. Despite the blood, despite the broken bones, despite the wounds that should have killed him already, Valkyrie's grip on Yuna tightened. "If you come closer, I will kill her myself. My claws can tear through her throat in an instant. Then you will die an instant later. You'll die first. Look at you. You can barely stand." Taiho took a step forward. Then another. Blood left a trail behind him. "Maybe," he said, "but I will not die alone." Valkyrie backed away, dragging Yuna with him. For the first time in his long life, he did not know what to do. His guards were gone. His plans had failed. And this bleeding, broken human was still coming. "What are you?" Valkyrie demanded. "What kind of species creates creatures like you?" Taiho stopped. He was close now, close enough to see the sweat on Valkyrie's silver skin, close enough to smell the fear. "We are human," he said simply. "We are small. We are weak. We live short lives and die easily. But when someone threatens what we love, we do not calculate the odds. We do not weigh the costs. We fight. We bleed. We die if we have to. And we never, ever stop. He reached out and grabbed Valthyri's wrist, the hand that held Yuna. She said no. Tejo continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow filled the room. Every time you asked, she said no. Every gift you sent, she refused. Every threat you made, she endured. And still you did not listen. His grip tightened. Bones cracked. Valthyri screamed and released Yuna. She stumbled away, running to the far corner of the room. Tejo lifted Valthyri by the throat with his last remaining strength. The ancient Khazari kicked and clawed, but he could not break free. You wanted to know what happens when a human is pushed too far, Tejo said. Now you know. He could have killed Valthyri then. It would have been easy. One more squeeze, and the ambassador would be dead. Justice would be served, but Tejo was not a murderer. He was a protector. He threw Valthyri to the ground and stood over him, swaying, barely conscious. If you ever come near her again, Tejo said, if you ever speak her name, if you ever even think about her, I will find you. Wherever you hide, whatever guards you have, however long it takes, I will find you, and I will end you. Valthyri lay on the floor, broken and beaten. He said nothing. There was nothing to say. Tejo turned and walked toward Yuna. Each step was harder than the last. The blood loss was catching up to him. The world was getting darker. Are you okay? He asked when he reached her. She was crying. You idiot. You absolute idiot. Look at you. You're dying. Are you okay? He repeated. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. He smiled, the first real smile she had ever seen from him. Good, he said. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed into her arms. Yuna screamed for help. Her voice echoed through the shattered doors, down the corridors, reaching the ears of those who had begun to search for them. And as the station's security forces finally arrived, they found a scene that would be described in whispers for years to come. 4 Khazari guards defeated, an ambassador broken on the floor, and a human woman holding a bleeding man who had given everything to protect her. The legend of humanity had begun. The medical bay of Aurelia 7 was a place of quiet machines and soft lights. Beings from across the galaxy came here when their bodies failed them. The doctors were the best known. Space specialists who understood the biology of 1,000 different species, but they had never treated a human in this condition. Tejo lay on a bed surrounded by tubes and monitors. His skin was pale, almost gray. The wound in his side had been closed, but the damage went deep. He had lost more blood than a human body should be able to lose. His ribs were cracked. His muscles were torn. The doctor said it was a miracle he was still alive. Yuna sat beside his bed. She had not moved in 12 hours. The nurses had tried to make her eat. Security officers had asked her questions. Delegates from Earth's diplomatic service had come to speak with her. She had ignored them all. She sat and watched Tejo's chest rise and fall, counting each breath like it might be the last. Outside the medical bay, the station was in chaos. The Khazari delegation had filed formal complaints within an hour of the incident. They demanded that Tejo be arrested, charged with assault, and executed according to Khazari law. Ambassador Valthyri, himself bruised and humiliated, had appeared before the emergency council session to make the demand personally. This human attacked me without provocation, Valthyri declared. His voice was hoarse, his movements stiff. He killed 4 of my guards. He threatened my life. This is an act of war against the Khazari Empire. The council chamber fell silent. Every species watched and waited. Then something unexpected happened. A delegate from the Vethany stood up. Her voice was small but clear. Ambassador Valthyri is not telling the full truth. I witnessed his behavior toward the human diplomat. He sent her unwanted gifts. He cornered her at events. He made threats when she refused him. Valthyre's face twisted with rage. This is not relevant. The human attacked me. There is more, another voice said. This one came from the Lothany representative. His bark-like skin rustled as he rose. The message that lured the human woman to the observation lounge was a forgery. It appeared to come from her own director, but was actually sent by the ambassador's staff. We have the records. More voices joined. The small kind Vethany, the ancient wise Lothany, the quiet Morvani, who rarely spoke at all. One by one, they shared what they had seen, what they had heard, what they knew, and they shared something else, their own stories. The Khazari did the same to our people, the Vethany delegate said softly. 50 years ago. A young diplomat. She was taken to Khazari space. She never returned. We were too afraid to speak, too weak to resist. Our records show 17 similar incidents over 3 centuries, the Lothany added. Always the same pattern. Interest, pursuit, threats, and then disappearance. We filed complaints. They were ignored. The Khazari are too powerful. The chamber buzzed with shocked whispers. The Khazari delegation looked around in disbelief. This was not supposed to happen. The smaller species were not supposed to speak. They were not supposed to have the courage, but humanity had shown them something that night. A single bleeding man had stood against 4 warriors and an ambassador. He had refused to surrender, refused to calculate the odds, refused to accept that power made someone untouchable. If a human could do that, maybe they could speak. Elder Counselor Mora, the ancient being who led the council, raised her hand for silence. She'd had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had witnessed wars and treaties and every kind of conflict. But even she seemed surprised by what was unfolding. The evidence is clear, she said at last. Her voice was like wind through mountains vast and final. Ambassador Valthyre violated the sovereignty of the human diplomat. He used deception, force, and the threat of violence to attempt to take her against her will. The human security officer acted in lawful defense of his assigned protectee. Valthyre stood up, his silver skin flushed with anger. This is an insult to the Khazari Empire. We will not accept. You will accept, Mora interrupted. Her voice did not rise, but somehow it filled the room. Or you will explain to your emperor why you have made enemies of 12 species in a single night. The chamber fell silent. Valthyre looked around and saw what he had not noticed before. The other delegations were not looking at him with fear anymore. They were looking at him with something else, contempt. He had been powerful for so long that he had forgotten what it was like to be judged, to be seen, to be held accountable. He had nothing left to say. The Khazari delegation left the chamber without another word. The doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder, and in the medical bay, Yuna held Teho's hand and wept. He woke on the 3rd day. Yuna was asleep in the chair beside him, her head resting on the edge of his bed. Her hand was still wrapped around his. Dark circles marked the skin beneath her eyes. Teho looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he squeezed her hand. She woke instantly. Her eyes found his, and for a second she just stared. You are awake, she whispered. I am awake, he agreed. His voice was rough, weak. Are you okay? She laughed, a strange broken sound that was half joy and half exhaustion. You almost died. You almost died, and the first thing you ask is if I am okay? It is the most important question. The tears came then. She had been holding them back for days, staying strong, staying focused. But now she could not stop them. You idiot, she said through the tears. You wonderful, stupid idiot. I thought you were dead. I thought I had lost you. Teho reached up with his other hand slowly, painfully, and touched her face. His fingers were gentle against her cheek. "I am still here," he said. "I promise to protect you. I keep my promises." She leaned into his touch and closed her eyes. The council ruled in our favor. Valkyrie is finished. Other species spoke up against him. They said what you did inspired them, gave them courage. Tejo was quiet for a moment. "I did not do it for them. I did it for you. I know." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "But that does not change what happened. You showed the galaxy something. You showed them what humans are made of." He shook his head slightly. "I am just a man who could not stand by while someone hurt the person he stopped." The words caught in his throat. The person he what? Yuna asked softly. Tejo looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time without his walls up, without his guard in place. Just a man looking at a woman. "The person he cares about," he said finally. "More than anything in the galaxy." Yuna leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. "I care about you too," she whispered. "More than I knew was possible." They stayed like that for a long time, breathing together, healing together. Two humans far from home who had found something worth fighting for. Outside, the galaxy continued to spin. Species talked and traded and argued. The Khazari licked their wounds in silence. The council made new rules and new promises, but none of that mattered in this small room, in this quiet moment where two hearts beat as one. Years passed. The stars continued their ancient dance. Civilizations rose and fell across the galaxy. Treaties were signed, broken, and signed again. This was the way of things, the endless cycle of beings reaching for the light. But something had changed. Something fundamental. The story of Aurelia 7 spread through every corner of known space. At first, it was whispered in corridors and trading posts. Then it was discussed in academies and military schools. Eventually, it became a legend one. Of those stories that every species knew, even if they could not agree on all the details. They called it the night humanity showed its teeth. Before that night, most aliens had viewed humans as curiosities. Clever, yes. Creative, certainly. But also small, fragile, and temporary. Their lives were so short, barely a century at best. Their bodies were weak, easily damaged, quick to die. How could such a species ever matter in a galaxy of immortal empires and ancient powers? After that night, they understood. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not calculate odds. They did not weigh the cost of victory against the cost of defeat. When something threatened what they loved, they simply acted. They threw themselves into danger without hesitation. They bled, they broke, they died, but they never stopped. This was terrifying to beings who had spent millennia learning to survive through caution. To species that measured every action against every consequence. To cultures that had forgotten what it meant to risk everything for something as simple as another person's safety. Humans, they learned, had never forgotten. The Khazari Empire went quiet after that summit. Ambassador Valkyrie was recalled to his homeworld in disgrace. The records of his behavior and the behavior of others like him became public across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the Khazari faced real consequences. Other species stopped bowing to them. Trade deals were renegotiated. Old debts were called in. It took decades, but the balance of power in the galaxy shifted. Not because humans were the strongest or the cleverest, but because they had shown something that strength and cleverness could not buy. The willingness to stand up when it mattered, no matter the cost. On Earth, Tejo and Yuna became famous whether they wanted to be or not. Their faces appeared in news reports and history books. Children in schools across the planet learned their names. Politicians invited them to speak at conferences. Military academies studied Tejo's fight in the observation lounge, breaking it down second by second. trying to understand how one wounded man had defeated 4 elite warriors. But Taeho did not want to be famous. He just wanted peace. He and Yuna returned to Korea after his recovery was complete. For a while, they tried to live normal lives. He took a job training security personnel. She continued her work in diplomacy, though she never returned to space. They got married in a small ceremony with only family and close friends. Yuna's mother cried tears of joy, but fame followed them everywhere. Reporters appeared at their door. Strangers recognized them in restaurants. Every conversation seemed to circle back to that night, to the blood and the violence and the impossible victory. Eventually, they moved to a small house in the countryside, far from the cities and the crowds. It was surrounded by trees and mountains, with a stream running past the garden. There, they finally found the quiet they needed. Tae-ho tended vegetables in the mornings. Yuna wrote books about galactic cultures, trying to help humans understand the universe they had joined. In the evenings, they sat on their porch and watched the sun set over the hills. "Do you ever regret it?" Yuna asked one night, years after they had left the stars behind. Taeho looked at her. His hair was gray now, his face lined with age, but his eyes were still sharp, still warm, still hers. "Regret what?" "What you did. The fight. The scars." She touched the old wound on his side, still visible after all these years. "You could have died." He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the fading light. Then he shook his head. "I would do it again," he said. 100 times, 1,000 times. Every version of me in every possible future would make the same choice. "Why?" He turned to face her fully, taking her hands in his. "Because I love you," he said simply. "I loved you then, even before I knew the word for it. I loved you when I watched you refuse those gifts. I loved you when I saw you stay strong under pressure that would have broken most people. And I loved you when I kicked down that door." Yuna's eyes filled with tears, not sad tears, but the kind that come when something is too beautiful to hold inside. "That is not a very practical answer," she said softly. "No," he agreed. "But it is the true one." They held each other as the last light faded and the stars appeared. Those same stars that had witnessed their story begin. Somewhere out there, ships were traveling between worlds. Diplomats were making deals. Species were meeting and clashing and learning to coexist. And everywhere they went, they carried a new understanding of humanity. A saying spread through the space lanes, passed from trader to soldier to explorer. It became the kind of wisdom that everyone knew, but nobody could trace to its source. Do not threaten what a human loves. They do not know how to give up. They do not understand when they are beaten. They will fight until their last breath and then find a way to fight some more. Some aliens thought this was foolish. What kind of species did not know when to retreat? But others understood. The Vethani, the Lothani, the Morvani, and dozens of other species who had been silent for too long, they understood. Because they had seen a human stand up when standing up should have been impossible. They had watched him bleed and break and refuse to fall. And they had found their own courage in his example. That was the true legacy of Aurelia 7. Not the victory, not the fame, not even the change in galactic politics. The legacy was simpler and more powerful than any of that. The legacy was a reminder to humans and aliens alike that love is worth fighting for. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. That one person, willing to sacrifice everything, can change the course of history. On a quiet night in Korea, Taeho and Yuna sat together under the stars they had once traveled. They did not need words anymore. They had lived their story. They had earned their peace. And in a galaxy of wonders, across billions of worlds and trillions of lives, there was one truth that now everyone knew. Humanity would never stop protecting what it loved. Not ever. Not for anything.